What's up, everybody? Welcome in those of us joining from the Murdoch Live, and then the rest that are just here for Sarah Boone, which is the next trial on the docket for us that we have been following along. It is a wild, wild case that is truly unbelievable. It seems like there are way too many of those these days, way more than there should be. We're coming off one that just was wild. And there is no shortage of wild cases. We've got the Vallow Daybell case also coming in April. It's not going to be streamed. We've done some videos on that. That's in Idaho. If you haven't caught up on that, check out that playlist. It's a wild. I had somebody call me that watches my videos from Idaho who needed some help on a personal injury case. I answered some of her questions, and she told me it's wild what's happening in my state. And I said, I know. Nobody would ever think of Idaho as some crime haven, and we've had some of the most heinous crimes come out of Idaho just over the last couple years with the Vallow Daybell case, and then obviously the Koberger case and the Idaho 4. So it's wild. That's coming up, but also Sarah Boone, which is we're going to focus this video on. For anybody that's new from the Murdoch case or otherwise, we're going to go through some background details of this case, tell you what it's about, direct you to a playlist so you can even get further breakdown on the details. But we're going to break down the most recent hearing and some new facts that we've learned, even though we've already talked about this a little bit. We have the actual video clip from the hearing now, and I've learned something from it. I'm not real excited to talk about it with you, but let's get to it. Let's get to Sarah Boone. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Hit that like button if you haven't already. And make sure you subscribe because we will be following Sarah Boone. I don't care if nobody else follows it. We're going to be following it. We hit 200,000 subscribers. We're doing a celebration tonight at 8:45 p.m. Eastern with a couple friends from YouTube. And yes, somebody just posted this. KO, Peter, can't wait to hear your in-court replays from the Boone case. Yes, I will be going over to Orlando for this case. I've talked to people that work at the courthouse and work around this case as well. So there'll maybe some special guests or at least some inside information coming. I'm not going to do anything to affect the trial. I'm not going to ask anybody any questions that would be inappropriate. So there won't be anything too juicy. A lot of just what I see and what I hear. But I am an officer of the court as well, so I'm not going to toe any lines just to talk about it on YouTube. But I will try to get you as much information on how. Sorry, I said if I may have said tonight. Sorry. I see the chat. Tomorrow night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 200K celebration. I see the chat. That's my B. Thank you for reminding everybody in the chat. Tomorrow night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 200K celebration. So we will actually be in Orlando to talk about this case, to watch this case for a couple days. I'm probably not gonna be able to go for the entire trial, depending on how many days it is. But yes, so hit that reminder bell after you subscribe, and it should alert you when we're doing it. We will post also that 8:45 as soon as these videos are uploaded. We will post the tile, so you can hit the reminder bell on that actual video. Jennifer, if you never heard about the Sarah Boone case, that's okay, because we are about to give you some details now. And I will give you a little graphic content warning. It is a murder case, and it's a graphic one, right? So there's a woman named Sarah Boone, and she has a boyfriend named Jorge or George. And they were playing hide and seek one night, drinking wine, and somehow her boyfriend ends up in a suitcase. She admits to the cops that she zipped him up in that suitcase and took part in putting him in that suitcase. And then she says she went upstairs and passed out because they had been drinking most of the night. She argues that she was not drunk. No way. A couple glasses of wine. They split a bottle, something like that. And she doesn't remember much of what happened, though. It was almost like I was drunk, but I was not drunk. I'm not a drunk. I don't drink that much, but I don't remember what happened. And I passed out. And then it wasn't even in the morning, but it was even later in the afternoon, or I should say afternoon, that she calls 911, reports him dead. Cops show up. There's body cam footage of this. She is taken down to the station and makes a statement for hours, once again, trying to talk her way out of criminal charges. And she thinks she's doing a great job. Spoiler alert, she's not. She's not doing a great job. And we did a full breakdown, multi-part breakdown of the hours of interrogation for Sarah Boone with law enforcement on our page, The Lawyer You Know. Check out that playlist. We did it on the interrogation and the body cam footage when they show up to arrest her at her house. It's wild. Her ex-husband and father of her child is there. He's talking about how they have a wild relationship. We find out later that there's been domestic violence on both sides and charges on both sides. And George has, other charges, and he's out on parole and doing this and that, or probation or whatever. He's got other criminal history in his past. So the whole time, her argument is, and it seems like for the entirety of her defense, it was an accident. I left a crack or a hole. He could have gotten out. He chose not to get out. It's his fault, not mine. Things like that. But that may have changed with her new lawyer. And yes, she has had many, many lawyers who have withdrawn, or she's tried to fire or gotten in fights with. This lawyer was so non-responsive, I'll say, to her questions and needs that the judge had to direct him and order him to go and talk to Sarah Boone prior to this hearing that we're about to watch together. He has filed a motion to withdraw, trying to get out of the case, saying there are issues with this case with his family and his beliefs. Very strange, cryptic language, more than just irreconcilable differences. And the judge will not let him off this case. So he will be her defense lawyer for this trial. So, she is charged with second-degree murder. Okay, we've seen a lot of first-degree premeditated murder. We've seen some stuff in some other states, but Florida has second-degree murder, which basically is depraved heart, depraved mind murder, as some of you may know it, which is basically when someone is killed by an act that shows somebody has a depraved heart or depraved mind, which is basically no regard for human life or reckless indifference of human life, so much so that they were angry, evil intent, that kind of deal, right? That there wasn't some plan. Some people like to say premeditated. Even now, Alec Murdaugh's cases, they say premeditated is like that. We don't have premeditated murder here, but even premeditated can be like that. Well, they decided to charge her with second-degree murder, not first-degree premeditated murder, which I think is the smart thing to do. You don't want to overcharge and lose. I think they've charged appropriately based on the facts that they think they can prove in trial. We will see if they do, in fact, prove those, because right now, regardless of what anybody thinks about Sarah Boone from these other interviews or, what we've heard, what we've seen, what we've talked about, she is presumed innocent today. As she goes and sits down in court in April, she is presumed innocent until the state proves beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. So we talked about her defense at first, but we find out in this hearing there may be a new defense. And if you've watched the prior video, you already know what that defense is. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're not going to dig in detail because we went through some cases and explanation of what this defense actually is. But I do want to watch. It's only 3 minutes. We're going to watch this hearing together so you can get a feeling for the apathy of this lawyer, how her defense is progressing, and why these delays are coming forward, and whether or not we think these delays will all be solved by early April. So let's watch this hearing together and hear from the judge.
Why don't we go ahead and address Sarah Boone, since I think some people would prefer that case get called next. So, so the last time we talked, Mr. Bankiewicz, we had a status hearing. Ms. Boone was present, and where we left things is you were going to follow up with her, have a meeting at the jail, and see where things stand. So have you had a chance to meet with Ms. Boone?
Judge, I have not, and the reason I have not is this is the first day I'm out of bed with COVID, and I contracted that. I had her set.
So we knew this already. They did not meet even after the judge's order because the lawyer got COVID and he hasn't gotten out of bed. If you're the judge, not really much you can say to that, but it gets worse.
Actually twice last week, and I contracted that. I had her set actually twice last week and had to cancel both of those because of COVID.
He had her set twice last week and had to cancel those because of COVID. Now, listen, if the guy had COVID, nothing you can do, right? If he's sick and he's bedridden, there's nothing we can do. But if you're Sarah Boone and your life is literally on the line, and we've seen some from other videos, and we talked about this lawyer, that it has been months, unreasonably long time since he's even spoken to her. When your lawyer, after all that, sets an appointment and then cancels it, and then sets an appointment and then cancels it, and you know you have this hearing coming up, you know you have a trial coming up, and you still don't hear from your lawyer even after a judge orders him to talk to you, that's pretty tough. Okay. And regardless of what we think about people, we want them to get fair representation of competent counsel. And that's tough. I feel for her. I think that's horrible. I don't think anybody should go through that. Even the worst of the worst in our country. I really don't think you should go through that and having literally nobody to represent you or talk to about your case, especially when he's being paid for it. So listen, if it would have been that he was talking to her in reasonable intervals and he had to cancel 2 appointments because COVID, no big deal. We get it. That happens. But when months and months have gone by and you've made a conscious decision as the lawyer not to talk to her, and then you still have to cancel multiple appointments, that's tough.
Issues. And so, like I said, today's the first day that I am actually up and about. And so I'm going to have to reschedule that meeting with her. But the case is not ready for trial. We're still looking into experts. And I have a death penalty case that.
The fact that they're still looking into experts, right? We're starting to get indications because we heard some of this in written form, but that's the difference between watching it and listening to it with our eyes and ears. And then the difference between reading an article, which we're going to have to do, where we have no choice really on the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case, or cases that do not have cameras in the courtroom. Prince Joey, I believe it is going to be televised. I've talked to some people that have worked on some other televised cases in Orlando. And it seems like this one is going to be, but I haven't seen any confirmation of that yet. But the difference here is we hear that they have just started or are still talking to experts. And we're supposed to get interviews done with Sarah Boone, reports done, depositions done. The prosecution gets to have experts respond and look through those reports. And the prosecution gets to take depositions of these witnesses and the prosecution experts that may come as a response. This is knock number one, making me think this case ain't going to trial in April.
At set time certain in Lake County, starting the first week in February.
He's talking about a death penalty case that's going to last 3 weeks. That's why he gets this continuance.
3 weeks. So I'm asking for your April docket and for purposes of a continuance.
What's left to be done?
I've spoken to 2 experts and they have not gotten back with me as far as scheduling and going out to see Ms. Boone.
If the judge wanted to be a jerk, he'd be like, oh, when did you talk to him? Was it in the last week when you haven't been talking to Sarah Boone? Was it in the last 2 months? How can you possibly be talking to experts when you haven't spoken to your client in months? I just don't get that. I don't understand how that's possible. How you can, call the judge on this hearing today and talk to experts, but not talk to your client who you're supposed to be representing, even for 5 minutes, even if she's the most annoying person on the planet. Like, you took this job and you're getting paid for it. You can't even just give her some kind of case update. I mean, I think it's tough. It's not a good look for lawyers.
As an expert initially hired by the attorney that she hired privately, but there was no follow-up with that expert. And I have followed up with that expert. And basically, and I've told Mr. Cacciatore this, it's going to be a battered spouse defense. And so
that's the defense, battered spouse defense. Now, we talked about what it means. We talked about what they have to prove on another video if you want to deep dive into that. But for the purposes of this video, you need expert testimony and expert reporting to see and prove what battered spouse syndrome is. And it seems like they have done none of that. When we have done that, or insanity defenses, or something that's expert intensive, especially mental health expert, I mean, it can take months, if not years, to get that put together. Now, the judge is not going to let this last that long, but I would be shocked at this point if this case goes to trial in April. I hope it does, because it would work well in my schedule to be able to hop out there. And I really hope they don't push. I got 2 trials this fall set right now. So we will see. I'm going to try to make it happen. But, I mean, it does not seem like April's going to happen for this case.
we need to get some specific experts in that field.
So they have no specific experts in that field at this time. That is still something they are working on.
Fine.
When does your death penalty trial start in Lake County?
First week in February.
This hearing was done early February, so it would be about 2 months, or right before, it may have been March. So it was about, they would have had about 2 months to get all this done. Possible, but unlikely, especially when this guy, like Nicole is saying after her last letter to him, is not communicating with his client at all.
And how long do y'all anticipate?
3 weeks.
Mr. J, do you know what Mr. Cacciatore's position on this is?
He has no objection, and I don't know if the court sets status dates when it's nebulous when people are going to be ready, or if you just go ahead and set pretrial dates, that's fine. April sounds.
Well, I need it on a pretrial docket, so I'm going to grant Mr. Bankwitz's continuance on behalf of Ms. Boone. I'm going to set it for pretrial on March 28th and a trial period starting April 10th. But
so the pretrial is March 28th. So that's in about 3 weeks from now. I am willing to bet on that pretrial, we are going to hear another motion to continue, and the judge is going to push this case out even more. When you read the reporting, and I read most of the articles on this, I felt like April 10th was going to be the next trial date and it was actually going to go to trial. I am very skeptical at this point, unfortunately, that this case is going to get to trial on April 10th. I think that pretrial date of March 28th is the judge trying to push things to get done, as he should. But I don't think, the defense is in trial the entire month of February. So that means he's got 28 days basically to put together a battered spouse defense. I don't see it, especially with how slow everything else has been moving in this case.
I'm going to ask that Mr. Cacciatore and Mr. Bankwitz do schedule a status conference on the case end of February or beginning of March. Mr. Bankwitz, I want to make sure that you've been out to see Ms. Boone. And if there are any issues coming out of that, I want to address that sooner rather than later.
Yes, sir.
All right. File your motion. I'll grant the motion. The dates are as previously announced.
Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Bankwitz, what else do you have on the docket today?
That's all I have.
All right. So that is the Sarah Boone hearing and update on what we think is going to happen. I think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a 6-week case. I think it's going to be much quicker, but this battered spouse defense will absolutely extend it. It's almost like a second trial, right? Prove that she did it. And then you have to prove that then they have to prove she's a battered spouse. And then it's basically a self-defense. And then they get to rebut with their experts. So really interesting. Kaylee, yes, it is tomorrow night. Tomorrow night. EJ, I'll be in Florida. Will I be permitted into court? You probably will, unless they set up some kind of parameters around it. But I would say yes. I think the answer is going to be yes, that people can just come in. It's open to the public. Now, if it gets packed out and they have to have overflow rooms or something like that, but I think as it sits right now, everybody's welcome in. KO, will Boone be present at the pretrial? According to her, she wants to be. She has requested to be present at every hearing and everything that happens because it is, in fact, her case, as she reminded us. Now, if somebody screws up and she's not notified and something happens, that's going to be a problem. Kayla, if the judge were to end up allowing a new lawyer, does he get any disciplinary action for not even communicating with his client? Potentially, that would come through the Florida bar. There could be sanctions. There could be fines. There could be public reprimands. But at this point, it doesn't seem like it's gotten to that level. He did want to get off the case. It's possible he could get off the case and there'd be no repercussions. But at this point, the judge wants this case to go. So move it. This lawyer finally seems like he's working on it. He seems like he's putting together a defense. So maybe that will help move us in the right direction. That would be awful if you were sitting in jail waiting for your lawyer. Well, a lot of clients are, but even not to this extent. Like this is above and beyond what most clients deal with. Lita, Peter, how do lawyers find expert witnesses? There's a bunch of different ways, right? We know a lot of them. We know a lot of lawyers who have had similar cases. Ask them who's been good, who's done a good job for you. We've seen other cases. We've seen other trials. Like I've been watching these cases on YouTube. I could find these experts. I could call them if I want to and be like, hey, would you be interested in being an expert on my case? We've deposed experts in other cases. Sometimes I like a defense expert and I say, hey, there's a defense expert on trip and fall cases that I really liked when I deposed him on a case. And after that case, I've now hired him to be our expert on some cases. So sometimes it happens that way. There's a lot of different ways you can find experts. A lot of our personal injury cases, the experts are the treating physician. So whoever did the surgery on my client will also testify about it. So there's lots of different ways to find experts. Real Lady Justice. Dang, Peter, I want one of those hoodies. Is it sharp? Or it is sharp and looks butter soft. It absolutely is. And maybe I'll reach back out to that Roback guy and see if I can get some for some giveaways. Maybe that would be cool if we could collab like that to get you guys the goods and the merchandise. So yeah, if you guys like Roback, let me know in the comments. If anybody's Bev on another video said they're a Roback family, they order all sorts of things. Drinking lemon perfect and listening to you. Speaking of our bonds that we have as a group. Margaret said, Peter, I don't think she's going to get a fair trial with an unenthusiastic lawyer. I hope that changes because then that just creates a longer process with more appeals and issues and ineffective assistance of counsels. So that's tough. It's not a public defender, Keely. She had a public defender. I think she may have multiple public defenders. It's kind of like conflict counsel, somebody that is on the court appointed list. So he's not a private lawyer that she chose and is paying. He's being paid by the state. Private lawyers can get on the court appointed list. And so when the public defenders can't, or they get conflicted out, or like is happening in this case, she's run through a bunch. Sometimes you go to a court appointed lawyer. There are some nuances. Somebody says if it's basically self-defense, the threat disappeared once he was in the suitcase. There's some nuances because it has to deal with past history and what he did. Did he always beat her after something like this? If he got embarrassed, does that mean he was going to beat her? Does she have indications of that? We went through it on another video, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as the trial comes up, the battered spouse syndrome. Could she ask for a new lawyer? Theoretically, but she has had a tough time with lawyers generally. Misla, would you consider representing her? No. I try not to do criminal work anymore. I think I have very few criminal cases. Right now, our firm has some. My dad does most of our criminal work. I used to do a lot more of it earlier in my career. I'm not a big fan of it anymore. I think the system is so lopsided and prosecutors have way too much power. And it makes it really difficult to go, get beat down. And when you think things are unfair so much, and even winning a lot of trials or getting a couple hung juries and then getting the charges to get dropped or go away or whatever, it's just such a frustrating process that I feel a lot better representing the victims of injury cases that have been hurt from none of their wrongdoing, somebody else's negligence, somebody else purposely hurting them. I like it a lot more. I was never on the court appointed list, wouldn't want to be on the court appointed list. The only clients that have ever hired me are private clients that we can get together, get to know each other, see if it's a good fit, and not be forced into any representation that I don't want to be. It's something that I feel like if you have the opportunity to do that and pick your clients and agree with your clients that you want to work together, then do that. That's how I feel. Let's see what else we got. Kat. She is the most annoying person on the planet, second to Daryl Brooks, but she deserves an attorney. Yeah, regardless, everybody deserves an attorney. Azam, Peter, does the shirt fit? I see it on the table. I actually have not put it on yet, but yes, that very beautiful colored blue shirt is from Azam. I have not tried it on yet. I need to get a hanger because I'm going to put it up with a bunch of the other shirts that people from the channel have sent me, but it's very cool. Sungai Long, Golf and Country Club. Very cool. Looking forward to wearing it and hanging it up there with the rest of the collection. Sorry if you couldn't hear me when I turned away from this mic, because I know this mic you kind of have to be in. All right, a couple more questions, then we're going to have to get to our next appointment here at 3:00. Kay, is it possible they might not allow the video as evidence? Do you think the lawyers are backing away from the case because they feel it's unwinnable? No. Most defense lawyers don't care if a case is unwinnable, especially public defenders or court-appointed lawyers. Like, most of their cases are unwinnable. That's not the problem. Problems arise if there are threats or there are some issues, or the person is just horrible, or the person wants to commit fraud on the court. There are issues like that, but just that you're going to go lose a trial. Like, defense lawyers lose trials literally every day. It is no surprise to a criminal defense lawyer when they lose a trial. The deck is literally stacked against them. Is it possible they might not let the video in evidence? I don't see how they would keep that in evidence. To me, that shows her mindset. She says it's an accident. That video proves it's not an accident, or could prove, depending how it comes out in trial and maybe the surrounding facts against it. It can impeach a lot of what she said. She made statements to the law enforcement officers that I think that video impeaches, which would also bring it in for that reason. I think that video is coming in personally. Ray, question, isn't this defense really risky? Not really. I mean, she already admitted she did it. So it's one of those affirmative defenses that you did it, but there's a reason you did it that makes it not criminal. And I think that, I mean, risky, like she might lose. Sure, she might lose. Every criminal defendant might lose, but I don't think it's any more risky than anything else. Terry, Peter, do you think Sarah Boone will get a fair trial with a lawyer that doesn't want to represent her? So it's tough. And I will say that I think you can get a fair trial even if a lawyer doesn't want to represent you, because a lot of lawyers still do their job and do a good job. If he doesn't do his job and he doesn't prepare for the case, then that wouldn't be a fair trial, because that would not be a competent defense. So I hope he prepares for the case regardless of what he thinks, about Sarah Boone or what he thinks about this case. I hope he does his job. Penguin and Co. Peter's always objective. As I said, he never prejudges a case. He wants to see representation and evidence, which he reviews with the viewers. Reasons to share, 250K. Yes, we are on our way to 250K. All right. It is 3:00 though. I've got to get to my next appointment. Thank you everybody for joining us on this case. Share with anybody that's interested in what's coming next. This is one of the cases on the 200,000 subscriber celebration. We are going to talk about a lot more cases and a lot more of what's to come here on this channel. So hopefully you guys have already subscribed and liked this video on the way out. Glad to hang with you on this Monday afternoon. Everybody have a great rest of your day.